Are you looking for fun and satisfying sketchbook ideas that would even impress your cat? Wait, does that smell fishy? Was that cat a paid actor? Oh yeah, but he did get compensated quite well, and honestly, I would not recommend this specific actor because he would not sit still, and he showed his butt to the camera.
We need a Bob. I need focusing of this. Nah.
But I promise you that all of these sketchbook ideas are a lot easier than getting your cat to sit still for a few seconds. So let's get started with the easiest idea first. So this one is literally just circles, but don't worry, even if you can't draw a circle, it doesn't matter. Mine are a little bit crooked too. I used the acrylic markers from the Ohuhu Kakako, I think you say this, series, and I used it in a gradient order. I'm using Ohuhu products throughout this video because this video is kindly sponsored by Ohuhu. You can use any type of markers for this idea as long as the colors you choose fit well together or are in a satisfying order like this. Then the page is going to look pretty. I also varied the size of my circles a little bit to make it look more interesting and not just like flat circles. This is also a really fun idea and way to swatch your colors if you don't want to do regular boring swatches. I actually managed to put all of the colors from the set onto this page. So in conclusion, you can do this with a variety of colors. I just did rainbow order here, so that way I managed to fit a lot of colors onto one page. It also depends on the size of your paper and the size of the circles that you draw. And it doesn't even have to be circles. You could also do ellipses, you could do any other shape. But I wanted to show you the circles first because this is just so simple, but I still think that it looks kind of cute. It still makes an impact in a way, and it is so satisfying to do. You literally don't have to think about anything. You just draw one circle after another, and I just really loosely went in that rainbow order. Even that doesn't have to be perfect. I just did it so that the colors would look nice together, and the bonus effect is that now I have an overview of all of the colors that I have. I did something similar in the past with crayons. I did that with a lot of things. You could do this with watercolors. Of course, then it's going to take a little bit longer than if you're using markers. But this is probably the easiest idea that I'm showing you today, and I think this one can even be done by a complete beginner, and definitely allow yourself to do something simple every now and then because this is really fun and you get to play around, and it doesn't always have to be a super complicated masterpiece. You can just doodle around like I did here, and then you have a really pretty and satisfying page that you worked on. So here is the first page for today, and you can also see that some of the colors shimmer because some of them are metallic. And now we're heading on to the next page, and I am using a compass. You could also use a combination of round objects in different sizes, and I drew some circles. So these circles are just gonna help us a little bit. This idea might look a little bit more advanced, but honestly, it is so much easier than it looks. For this page, I only used the small tip of the acrylic markers, which is perfect for small details. You could also do this with fine liners if you want. So you can see I started with a little bit of a flower in the center, and then I worked my way towards the outside. And I used the circles as a little bit of a guide, so I would kind of stay symmetrical, but it really doesn't have to be perfect at all. Mine is definitely not fully symmetrical, and I definitely filled some of the gap with just little circles and stuff like that. You could do this a lot more perfectly if you want. You could measure stuff out and make sure that everything is mirrored perfectly on the other side. But honestly, I didn't really want to do that, and every time I have to think too much about these things, it kind of takes away the fun of it all. And so I try to be as loose as I can with this type of stuff and just allow myself to have fun here. I kind of mirrored the colors. You can see that I did purple on one side and then purple on the other side. And then I did these yellow branches here. And then I did similar ones on the other side. So I kind of mirrored everything. But again, I did not measure anything. I just used the circles as a little bit of a guide to know where everything goes. And that alone just made it look a little bit more put together. And in the end, I'm going to erase all of the circles, and then it's going to look even nicer and more thought out. Just keep in mind that where you put the marker, that goes probably for most art supplies. On those spots where you draw over the pencil lines, it's not going to erase as well. So I still have some very faint lines of the pencil showing through in those sections. But honestly, you have to look very closely to see that. And I'm not that bothered by it. You could also do a second layer of the marker on top and it would probably get rid of that. But I'm just saying that so you can make sure that your circles are not extremely dark. Just make sure that your pencil, you didn't push it too much into the page when you do the circles in the beginning. But honestly, I just built up the colors and all of those florals here. I limited my color palette a little bit. I used these 5 colors, I believe. I used 2 green tones, a yellow, a blue, and a purple tone. So you can see that you don't need a large variety of supplies. You could even do that in just one color. Like I said, you could use fine liners for this as well. If you want to do some type of mandala that you want to color in afterwards, you could just do outlines with a black fine liner instead. And then later on, you could color it in with colored pencils or markers or anything. So there is a big variety of ways on how you can do this. Fun fact, when I was a kid, I was literally obsessed with coloring books and these circular mandalas that you can color in. I spent every single minute of my free time as a kid. And when I was really young, I had a bunch of that free time and I sat down and colored. And when I was in kindergarten, you're usually 3 to 5 years old when you're in kindergarten here. I did absolutely nothing but color. The first year, I didn't even talk to the other kids. I remember that I looked at them and I thought they were so boring. I didn't want to talk to them at all. But then I saw that they had coloring books there and those fancy, I mean, when you're like 3 years old, everything is fancy to you, but they had markers there. And I just grabbed them and I started coloring, and that was all I did. And I remember the other kids trying to get me to talk. Every single day they had set a challenge who would be able to get me to talk on this day, but they never succeeded. I just wanted to color. And whenever I tell this story, people cannot believe it because now I'm pretty talkative, especially when it comes to art and the things that I'm passionate about. I literally can't shut up anymore. But back then, I could not be bothered to talk to the other kids. And I just sat there all day long. I completely lost track of time and I used all those beautiful colors and I had the time of my life. So I'm kind of getting back into this mindset now of just exploring, playing around, and allowing myself to do things imperfectly again. So please try to get into this mindset if you can. Try to remember how you did things back when you didn't have to be good at them, because then you will create art pieces that are actually fun to do. So then I erased the pencil and this is what it looked like. I really like how joyful this one looks. Even though it is not perfect, it absolutely doesn't have to be. So now let's flip to the next page and do the next idea. This one also involves 2 circles. We're doing a very rough sketch here with some clouds, a simple sun behind them, and then the bigger circle is a circular background. and this can be very messy. I erased the sketch so I can barely see it anymore, so it won't show through later on. And I am using the Ohuhu Mixed Media Sketchbook throughout these ideas here, and I use two different types of markers here. So this first layer is super rough, so please stay with me here and trust the process, because here I used alcohol markers. They're very, very nice for a first flat layer, but I was kind of messy here. I'm gonna build on top of that layer afterwards. Keep in mind that the markers will bleed through the paper. I used the protective plastic sheet that comes with the Mixed Media Sketchbook in between the pages to avoid that the marker will bleed through to the next page, but it will bleed to the back side of this page. I will actually show you an alcohol bleed proof sketchbook that doesn't even bleed through to the back side after this idea. But here I was going for a mixed media approach, so I was still using the Mixed Media Sketchbook, and I kind of really like the square format, and I like to play around with mixed media because it is really fun and loose. But after the alcohol markers, I am going to use the acrylic markers again, because we can build up an opaque layer on top of that. So whichever materials you use here, just make sure that your first layer is any material that can create a beautiful flat color, and then the second one is something that is opaque. So for example, you could also do watercolors and gouache, or alcohol markers and gouache, or watercolors and the acrylic markers. Like any combination here could work well. You could also include colored pencils. The idea is just to have this base here, and then afterwards I will show you how I added details to this so it looks really satisfying. And this piece, when you look at the end result, it might look a little bit more complicated compared to, let's say, the circle page, which was really, really easy. But this one is just building up the colors basically and doing a lot of these spirals. You could even simplify this down a lot. I just played around with the colors a little bit, and you can also see that I switched back and forth with the smaller bullet tip and the brush tip, because I used the smaller one for the super mini details and then the brush tip here for everything that was a little bit bigger. Sometimes you might need a second layer to get it to look really flat here, especially because this is mixed media paper and not marker paper, but it worked quite well. And like I said, this is just the first layer, but this was already super fun and satisfying to do, and I really encourage you to try this one. I would just say pick a limited color palette, because then it's going to look a little bit more put together. I'm mostly stuck to blues, purples, and just the yellow for the sun and some pink tones, because they're kind of in that range too. I did not use any green, for example, so that already makes the color scheme a lot more cohesive. So now I am using the acrylic markers again, and I'm using mostly the fine tip again because it's really useful for creating all those really small lines. You could also do bolder lines if you wanted to, but basically you can see that I kind of did outlines, but instead of making the outlines darker, I actually made them lighter. So this way, this is going to look really fun and a little bit different. It almost reminds me a little bit of stained glass, this look. I did some outlines, I also did some dots and some more interrupted lines. I just played around with that one a lot. This could be done in a variety of ways, and I could also see a very similar style for stuff like plants and greenery. So if you wanna use this idea and this style and apply it to your own specific piece with your own idea, you're also welcome to do that. or you can recreate the exact thing that I did here. All of these ideas always have those two options. So here you can see this finished page. I'm really happy with this one. It looks so nice and satisfying. Now here we have the new bleed-proof sketchbook. I decided to do another super simple page here, and I just wanted to swatch the markers from one of the sets. I actually picked two sets of colors. This one is more of a basic color range, and if you have any type of new art supply, or you have an art supply where you don't really know which colors are in it and you don't want to do super boring swatches, you could do something like this here. I did a variety of doodles and just put the color number next to them. If you don't want to do actual swatches, you could just leave out the color number. And like with the circles that we did in the beginning, I just roughly went in a rainbow gradient order. These aren't as many colors as in the acrylic markers that I showed, so it's not an exact rainbow. But I still think that this looks really fun, and this was honestly just for me to get in some swatches, but I honestly think that regular swatches are boring. So here I even added in more tiny details, more smaller circles and stuff, just to fill that page up a little bit more and make it look even more interesting. So it's not just those very flat colors. And I've actually used this color at this point, so I am actually using this as a reference for all of the colors that are in the set. So it is both useful and fun. And as you can see, absolutely no bleed through, which is pretty rare for alcohol markers. And here I have another set that I picked. I thought that this set would be a great addition to any basic color set because it has additional skin and or earth tones. And I am actually drawing this on the back side of the other page, so there were absolutely no issues with bleeding or anything. And because I kind of wanted to swatch these colors as well, I decided to draw something that is in the range of all of these more brown and pink and beige tones. And I must have been hungry when I came up with this, because my idea was to basically draw all types of baked goods, candy, anything that is sweet that you could either drink or scoop up, stuff that smells really nice. I feel like this page almost smells. Is that weird? Like in a good way. It has a really nice vanilla scent to it. I mean, none of these supplies that I used are scented or anything, but if you look at this page, it just looks so yummy and satisfying. Is that just me? Maybe I'm hungry again. I don't know. I should probably eat something. But you can see that I did these rather simple things here, honestly, because this is, again, kind of a swatch page. I just tried to swatch my colors in a sneaky way where I'm also showing you ideas, if that makes any sense. But I just used all of the colors in this set, and then I also used a brown fine liner just for some additional line art, just to make it look a little bit more put together. And I also, by the way, I usually work from right to left. I don't know if you've noticed that. That is because I'm left-handed, and I am very aware that a lot of art supplies, they just need some time to dry and they might smudge. That doesn't really happen with alcohol markers because they dry really quickly. But I'm just so used to going from right to left now that I just instinctively use that or do that all the time with every single thing I draw. I usually start on the right side. So if you are left-handed and you've never considered that, maybe do that too, because especially if you're using supplies that might smudge, this could really help. I find that it worked with the fine liner here as well because the paper is so smooth. And so you can avoid the smudging because you're going in the right direction, or from right to left in this case actually, and it won't smudge because it has time to dry. So that's just a little bit of an additional tip that might not be useful. This is probably not useful for 80% of the people who are watching, but if you're one of the 20% of people who are left-handed, let me know. Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. And let me know if you are left-handed. Are people also constantly pointing it out to you like you didn't know it before? They're coming over to me and they say things like, "Oh my gosh, you're left-handed?" And I'm like, yeah, I knew that. It's not like I hadn't noticed, but it's almost like they're trying to inform me of that fact, like I'd been unaware of it before. I would really love to hear if any of you have the same experience. But as you can see, I am still drawing all of those really yummy baked goods, and my hunger is increasing every second I am doing this. But at this point, I'm still using all new colors, not repeating any. I will be reusing some colors on the left side because I didn't really plan out how many I would need for all of the things that I am drawing here. But I only swatched them once. But I also still, with this one, I did use that as a reference to know what my colors look like. So these are very practical pages, even though they're cute. So you might, if you want to swatch your colors, you might want to do something like this, maybe even on a bigger scale, and you could hang it up somewhere and then you could look at it. I don't know, this could be an idea if you have art supplies that you want to swatch. And I did a big variety of things here. I repeated some of them. I did more than one of the little bonbons. Is that an English word? It must be. And I did 2 donuts at least, or maybe even 3. I did this multiple drinks. One of them I assume would be more like a hot chocolate, and the other one maybe even a matcha or something like that. I didn't really define which is which, but we have a bunch of cake, and I just tried to get all of the colors in here. And even though all of these are basically skin and earth tones, this still looks pretty colorful and like a really neat palette. And there's a bunch of colors in there that I honestly don't know if I had used them in this specific way if I hadn't done this page where I challenged myself to use every single one of them. So maybe this could be an idea for you to get some new things going and some new ideas flowing. By the way, as always, all of the products that I use here are linked in the description box below. So check out those links if you're interested in any of the products that I showed. And Ohuhu did actually give me a code. VisualMind10 is going to give you a 10% discount on all products on the Ohuhu website. This is valid from November 21st and it will last for 6 months. Make sure to check that out. I will also put all of that information in the description box below as well. And if you'd like to see some more creative marker ideas, then check out this video next.